Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. Today I'm here with Dr. John Chuback, and I'm going to let you tell us a little bit. I know that you've written a number of books. Your newest one is The Straight A Handbook, the 50 Most Powerful Secrets for Ultimate Success in and Out of the Classroom, and that is coming out on April 15th. But I think you've gotten a number of other books.
Yes, I have one book out that's called Your Own Damn Cheese, which is all about the power of the human mind and the conscious, subconscious, superconscious mind. And we do have one or two coming out. Those are not yet out, but those are the two we have right now, the Straight A Handbook and this.
Okay, great. So you have three children, and you have your own story. Two of them, I think, are in law school right now, and one's about to graduate high school. And
That's exactly.
So you have your own experience of going through medical school, residency, fellowship, and then along the way realizing that's not really what you wanted to do. And so tell us about that journey and how, when was the moment when you said, I'm gonna call it quits?
Well, I didn't exactly call it quits, but I sort of made a pivot, a major pivot. I grew up in a family where my father was a physician and my mother was a nurse, and I was strongly urged from a young age to become a doctor. And at that time, going back to the 1980s, cardiac surgery was a brand new field and really growing and very exciting and a very lucrative field with a great need. And my father pushed me to become an open heart surgeon if I was going to become a doctor. And that was the path that I pursued. So I did go to 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 5 years of general surgery training, and 2 years of cardiac surgical fellowship to become an open heart surgeon. And I practiced open heart surgery for 6 years. But by the time that I got there, things had changed quite radically in the field. The need for the field was largely reduced as technology improved. And reimbursement in the field, financially, there was a big change and shift in things. So I found myself to be, very, very unhappy and looking for a new career direction. And that's when I became aware of varicose vein work and laser-based, office-based work. And so I'm still a vascular surgeon and still working for full-time as a vascular surgeon specializing in veins. But I made a major pivot away from open heart surgery, which came as a complete shock to me. I had no way to anticipate that would have ever happened.
Okay, so now you have three kids, two out of the house, one almost out of the house. Tell us how that impacted? I mean, it sounds like your father kind of steered you in one direction. Did you find yourself pulling away from doing the same thing for your kids?
Well, again, I go into this in my book, Make Your Own Damn Cheese, the power of the subconscious mind and the paradigm and self-concept. I was very much raised in this concept of becoming a professional. I have three sisters, two are dentists, one is an attorney. And so we were basically, the running joke in the family was, my father said, you could be anything in the world that you want to be, anything at all, as long as you're a doctor, lawyer, or a dentist. So we all followed that advice, and it's worked out quite well for everybody. And I have to say, it seems that this generation is giving the same advice. I have two sons in law school, as you said, and my daughter is planning to go to law school as well. So that has not changed, but certainly nobody followed the medical field at this time.
Okay, so tell us what your big epiphany took you to, because you have many entrepreneurial endeavors that you're doing, and so it's not just that you're practicing medicine. You learned a lot in that transition.
I did. I mean, I learned the fact that you can transition. You're allowed to change directions because you set a certain goal, and even if you achieve that goal, doesn't mean that you have to be married to that goal for the rest of your life. You grow and you mature, and you're allowed to have new feelings, and things change also. In my case, I was a very successful open heart surgeon, but the field had changed dramatically. It wasn't that I didn't like cardiac surgery. It was the game had changed. The playing rules had changed. So you have to be able to shift. You have to be able to adapt and pivot. And it's perfectly okay to do that for people, young people especially, who set long-term goals for themselves, to go to this college or that college or become this or become that. If it is not what you anticipated when you get there, I'm here to tell you it's perfectly okay to change, and it might be the best thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah, I went to law school and now I'm doing a media company. So there you go.
Exactly. And in fact, one of the reasons I encourage my children to become attorneys, as I told you, I have one sister as an attorney, is because you have a great profession to fall back on, and you can always make a great living as an attorney. There's always a need, and you have the skill set, but you're not necessarily going to be pigeonholed. Many of those skills that you learn can be reworked to help you be successful in so many other areas of life and business. So that's one of the things that encouraged me to encourage them to take that route.
So you do talk about the idea that change can be so challenging, and we use the word pivot now, which seems like a little sexier than change. But at the end of the day, it's all about how much do we take that risk and try and do something different, even when we're living in a situation that is untenable and we've got to do something. That moment of change is so hard for us. Why is it so hard? And how do we help our teenagers realize that it's still good?
Well, change always brings on a sense of uncertainty, and uncertainty always brings with it a feeling of anxiety, instability. So those are not, great emotions and feelings. And as we get older, we're more accustomed to those feelings, and we recognize it's part of the road, it's part of the fabric of life. But when we're young, those kinds of stressors and strains are very new to us, and our reaction to them can be quite extreme. So with change always comes these negative feelings, what I call a negative vibration, where the body goes into a negative vibration and a sense of dis-ease. And that dis-ease often leads us to want to retreat and go back to where we started, because we're often more comfortable with the status quo. As you said, even if it feels untenable or unbearable at the time, at least it is what it is and you know what it is. So oftentimes we reach what we call the terror barrier, that moment where we have to choose change or retreat from change. And again, I'm here to share the message that fight through and break through that terror barrier, because on the other side is oftentimes freedom and happiness.
Okay, so you talk about things that hold us back from change, and one of the things that I really it resonated with me was the crab phenomenon.
Yeah, those two things go so beautifully hand in hand. I've been teaching about the crab phenomenon for several years now, and only recently, through more personal study, did I find out something really subtle and really important to share. So it's great that you're asking about that. The crab phenomenon goes back to a story, which is based in fact, that crab fishermen, when they catch crabs and they trap crabs, they place them in large buckets, large plastic buckets filled with seawater. And they don't have to put lids over them, because as one crab begins to try to crawl out and get out over the edge of the bucket, the other crabs grab him and drag him or her back in and pull them back under. And you wind up with this churning bucket of crabs and nobody ever gets out. So it may be not getting out of the neighborhood. It may be not being the first person in your family going to college, maybe the first person who's going to start a business or become a professional, or whatever the case may be. We live culturally in units like these crab buckets, our families, our neighborhoods, our cultures, our ethnicities. And when we try to break free, the other crabs who are close to you and love you and care about you say, don't go, don't leave us behind, stay with us. And they pull you back in. So that's something we all put up with. But one of the new insights I've had into that subject that I want to share with you and your listeners and your viewers is why. Why don't they want you to change? Why don't they want you to grow? And the answer goes back to your first question, which is, when you leave the bucket, you've changed the environment. And when you've changed the environment, you've forced change on the other people in your life, the other quote unquote crabs. And they don't want to put up with the change of your absence. So they'll do anything to maintain the status quo. It's not necessarily because they love you so much. It's not necessarily because they care about you or they want the best for you. In many cases, they do. But the real motivator is they don't want to have to put up with the change of your changing.
Well, I'll give you an example. I think when moms in particular, as primarily taking care of the kids, when they decide either to work or to stay at home, that's such a breaking of rank. And there's a lot of pressure. Like women feel a lot of pressure in that situation. So I think your crab analogy is perfect. Like I decide to go back to work and you feel uncomfortable about it because I've changed your situation.
Very much so. And many times, if there's a spouse involved, the spouse will feel uncomfortable with that. The children will feel uncomfortable with that. Your friends who may not have as much access to you. Your change is almost never independent of all the other people in your lives. And that change inflicts change on them. And so not only are you uncomfortable with the initial change, they're all uncomfortable with the initial change. And all of that put together oftentimes prohibits that change from ever taking place. And that's usually the worst thing that can happen. We all have to fight through that, not only as individuals, but as a social group.
Okay, so let's talk about raising teenagers and how we give them the tools to deal with what we know to be true. That, you make a decision to go to a college and it's not the best fit for you, and you're thinking about transferring and you're getting peer pressure at school that like, oh, come on, stay, or whatever it is. Whatever that scenario is, it's going to be over and over again for our kids. How do we gird them to be able to still opt for a better change?
Wonderful question. I'm an expert on the subject because I lived through it. Many, many years ago, when I was finishing high school, I went to Dwight Englewood School in northern New Jersey. And I was planning to go to Columbia University. My older sister had gone there. And I was a good student, more along the B+, A- lines of students, came from a good private school. And in those days, I had a very real shot of getting into Columbia. Today, with those grades, I wouldn't even apply, but it was a different time. And I really didn't have a plan B. So I was waitlisted, and then I was rejected. And I wound up going to Macalester College out in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is a very fine, small liberal arts school. But being from northern New Jersey, I had never been to Minnesota. I had never visited the college. And I was devastated when I got there, absolutely devastated. I was homesick, lonely, depressed, you name it. And I performed very, very poorly my first semester of pre-med. So I put up with the unexpected blow to my ego that I didn't get into Columbia. And then I put up with this newfound homesickness and loneliness, being half the country away in Minnesota with, severe weather and cold temperatures and underground tunnels connecting the college. And I was just, literally disoriented, devastated. It was the worst time of my life up until then in my young life. So I came home and I told my parents, at the break after the first semester, that I'm not going back to Minnesota. And I transferred to a local college, Fairleigh Dickinson University, which was a local commuter school, in many ways the brunt of a lot of jokes, like many local colleges are and so forth. But I lived at home. I stayed at home. I excelled at Fairleigh Dickinson. I got a wonderful education there. The fit was perfect for me. I was happy. I was comfortable. And it was one of the great, great learning lessons in my life that you have to be true to your own self, to your own heart, and to how you're feeling. The rank in the book meant nothing. It was all about how at ease I was in the environment, and then I excelled, and then I thrived in my academic and then in my professional career.
Wow, I didn't even know we were going to get here because we're doing an 8-week college summit all about, finding the right fit for yourself. This past Tuesday night, that was the whole conversation. How do you find the right fit? So that's great. It worked out. Another case of someone it working out, not the way you thought it would, but it working out.
And to your question specifically, I had many friends from Dwight Englewood who went off to Georgetown and Dartmouth and other, very fine places. And they were so worried about me, and they were assuring me, John, you can't stay at Fairleigh Dickinson. You'll never get into medical school from there, and so on and so forth. You have to transfer. I was accepted to NYU and transfer, and I never wound up going. My other sister had gone there. And they were all wrong. They were dead wrong. They spoke from this position of such authority and knowledge. I went to the medical school guidance director at Fairleigh Dickinson, and I said, my friends are convincing me or assuring me that I'll never get into medical school. He said, they don't know what they're talking about. He brought out stacks and stacks of papers from the previous 5 years of graduates being accepted to the best medical schools. And I myself was accepted to very fine medical schools, including NYU, Georgetown, Mount Sinai. People profess to know what they're talking about. And I'm talking to the young people, especially here. Your friends and peers and so forth, they will often make themselves out to be experts on this subject, particularly of college and what it means and how it's going to affect your life. And I can assure you, in most cases, they're absolutely wrong. They may have the best intentions for you, but they're incorrect. This country has 3,000 great colleges and universities, and from just about any place, you can achieve anything that you would ever set your heart on. And I can assure you, I give you my personal guarantee on that.
Okay, there you go. You heard it here. Dr. John Chuback gave you his personal guarantee. Okay. Let's end with this question. You've done a lot of writing and researching, raised your own kids. What advice do you have for parents of teenagers?
Well, it's a tough thing to do, but it's something that we have chosen to do. We've chosen to start families and have children, and we've made those decisions. And hopefully none of us have any regrets, but it's a challenge and it's a big responsibility. Be there with them, spend as much time as you can with them. Talk to them, listen to them. That's something I have to work very hard at because I'm a big talker. But it's important to close your mouth, open your ears, be sensitive to them. I was so blessed that when I came home from Minnesota and I told my parents that, I'm going to, stay home and I'm going to go locally, they were supportive, they were loving, they opened their arms to me, they opened the home back to me. And they supported my decision. They never questioned it. And they were just there for me to support me. And that's, I think, a huge part of what we can do. We can advise, which we must, and we can guide, which we must, but we also have to listen, and we also have to give leeway for young people to express themselves and live their own life and their own dream.
All right, Dr. John Chuback, thanks so much for your wisdom here, and good luck with your book. The name of the book is The Straight A Handbook, The 50 Most Powerful Secrets for Ultimate Success in and Out of the Classroom. It'll be available again on April 15th. Thanks so much.
Thank you.